Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a look at a really fascinating, high-stakes challenge. We are going to see how you take dry, highly technical United Nations jargon and turn it into tangible, on-the-ground actions that actually save our planet's migratory birds of prey. Now, it's super easy to look at a dense 50-point UN strategic framework and see absolutely nothing but bureaucracy. But hidden right there within those pages is literally a survival manual for some of the world's most incredible avian predators. We're going to unpack a strategic guide designed for the Program Management Officer of the UN's Raptors Memorandum of Understanding, and we'll see exactly how international diplomacy is forged into life-saving conservation. Okay, let's dive into this action funnel roadmap. We'll start with the conservation conductor, then move to science meets diplomacy, followed by funding the flyways, data-driven bird protection, and finally, from mandate to action. So, I want you to keep this framing question in the back of your mind as we go through this. How do international treaties actually save birds? Because, there's often this massive gap between the broad ambition of an international treaty signed in some glittering UN assembly hall and the gritty, logistical reality of local implementation out in the field. Bridging that gap? Well, that's exactly what we're exploring today. But before we get into the mechanics, let's ground ourselves for a second. The Raptors MoU is a specialized UN agreement spanning across Africa and Eurasia, and it is entirely dedicated to migratory birds of prey. We're talking about coordinating conservation across well over 100 countries. It is an administrative puzzle on an absolutely epic scale.
Section 1. The Conservation Conductor.
We really need to look at the person responsible for running this massive operation, the Program Management Officer, or PMO. But actually, scratch the image of a traditional paper-pushing desk jockey. They are really more like a conservation conductor. They have to wrangle an incredibly diverse, complex group of stakeholders. You've got the UN leadership setting the mandate, you've got national governments who actually hold the sovereign power, then there's the technical advisory group providing rigorous science, NGOs pushing for urgent action, the broader research community, and of course the international donors who pay for the whole shebang. The PMO's job is to align scientists, diplomats, and donors so they're all hitting the exact same notes.
So, the crucial point is that the PMO's true job is acting as the ultimate translator. As the strategy clearly states, success depends on translating broad international commitments into clear decisions, funded actions, and verifiable results. Because let's be honest, if they fail to translate a mandate into a funded action, the entire treaty just remains an expensive piece of paper.
Section 2. Science meets diplomacy.
And this brilliantly illustrates where scientific urgency violently collides with political reality. On one hand, the data might be screaming that a species of eagle needs immediate, borderless habitat protection across 3 different countries. But on the other hand, local implementation is, messy. It involves fragmented authority, competing government departments, and severely limited local capacity. The science demands immediate action, but governments can only execute what their resources and laws actually allow.
It's wild to think about. But the biggest bureaucratic threats to these birds aren't just ecological issues like poachers or habitat loss, they are systemic risks. Fragmented authority leads to delayed decisions. Funding gaps mean field operations simply do not launch. Overprogramming leads to weak sequencing, where massive commitments are made but completely fail to materialize. This is exactly why disciplined program management is literally a matter of life or death for these species. If the PMO can't mitigate these administrative risks, the birds are the ones who suffer.
Section 3. Funding the flyways. Obviously, none of this happens without money. To ensure the strategy is a fully costed reality and not just, wishful thinking, the PMO must take 4 incredibly strict steps. First, they rigidly connect costs to priority results, so absolutely no funding vanity projects. Second, they clarify what is essential core funding versus what requires specific one-off project funding. Third, they need to get creative and identify in-kind support from partners, think shared office space or borrowed equipment. And fourth, resource mobilization has to be integrated directly into the program design from day one, so they aren't scrambling for cash after a project is already announced.
Now, how do they actually justify where that money goes? Budget choices aren't just based on historical allocation, like, hey, we gave them money last year, so we'll just do it again. No way. They must be rigorously defended using 5 specific metrics to ensure maximum value for money. Conservation value drives 30% of the justification. Are they actually ready to implement? That's 25%. Then they have to weigh the long-term sustainability at 20%, equity among regions at 15%, and finally, risk exposure at 10%. This structured, data-driven approach ensures donor money is spent exactly where it will have the highest verifiable impact.
Section 4. Data-driven bird protection.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the highly delicate balance the PMO has to navigate once the finances are secured. The mandate explicitly tells them to avoid unsupported urgency as well as unnecessary analytical delay. Think about it. You can't just act blindly because someone is panicking, but you also absolutely cannot fall into analysis paralysis while species population plummets. Evidence has to be gathered at the exact level required to make the decision at hand.
To hit that perfect balance, they rely on a strict data governance protocol. The PMO has to ensure global data interoperability. They agree on metadata standards right up front, so a researcher in Europe is using the exact same metrics as a researcher in Africa. But honestly, perhaps the most vital requirement is designing for low connectivity. A high-tech tracking system deployed in a university lab is totally useless if a wildlife ranger out in a remote savanna can't access it on their mobile device. The data has to be rigorous for sure, but it also has to be globally accessible.
Section 5. From mandate to action.
Let's move to and see how this builds into daily execution. This continuous action loop is what translates thick UN jargon like results-based management into an agile, real-world workflow. It all starts with an approved mandate, which immediately becomes a resourced plan. Execution is then delegated very clearly to the right stakeholders. But it doesn't just stop there. Step 4 is evaluation and learning, followed by adaptive management. It's a constant churning engine of doing, measuring, and adjusting based on the gritty realities of the flyway.
And a really strict rhythm of accountability is what keeps this engine running. Quarterly portfolio reviews aren't just for checking boxes. They're designed to authorize corrective actions before delays become deeply entrenched. Annually, they generate the detailed work plans. But they always maintain a multi-year strategic rolling view. This ensures that the short-term outputs we're doing today are actually reinforcing the long-term survival of the species decades down the line.
To summarize the ultimate mission derived from this whole framework, administrative perfection is not the goal. The real goal is to build a reliable operating system. It's honestly a form of bureaucratic heroism. By mastering the governance, the funding, the data, and the workflow, the PMO creates an environment where partners can actually protect migratory birds of prey at a scale that is truly meaningful.
Which leaves us with this final thought. We've seen what it takes on paper to orchestrate conservation across entire continents. But the question remains, are our global institutions truly equipped to build these operating systems fast enough to save our planet's most vulnerable species? Understanding the hidden mechanics of international conservation, just like we've done today, is the very first step in ensuring that they are. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning how the systems around us really work.